The recycled air aboard Kepler 186F station carried the familiar mix of ozone, processed nutrients, and too many species body odors. Commander Marcus Thorne inhaled deeply, trying to find comfort in the familiarity despite his recent demotion to this backwater outpost. After 15 years in the Human Coalition's elite border security forces, he had been relegated to routine cargo inspections on the edge of Coalition space, all because of one failed mission that had made headlines across 3 sectors. Commander Thorne, I presume. The voice was melodic yet precise, each syllable articulated with careful deliberation. Marcus turned to face the speaker, a Xylosian with obsidian-tinted purple skin that seemed to absorb the harsh station lighting. Her posture was impeccable, her uniform pristine. Officer Lyra Vac, she continued, extending a 4-fingered hand in the human custom. I have been assigned as your partner for station security operations. I have studied your file. Your experience is extensive, if somewhat unconventional. Marcus accepted the handshake, noting the cool, smooth texture of her skin. Nice to meet you, officer. And please, it's just Marcus. We don't stand on ceremony at the edge of civilized space. Lyra's facial ridges tightened slightly, the Xylosian equivalent of a frown. Procedure dictates that proper rank acknowledgement maintains hierarchical respect, Commander. Marcus sighed. Great. A by-the-book alien with no sense of humor. This assignment just kept getting better. Let me show you around, he said, gesturing toward the busy, docking hub stretching before them. Kepler 186F station hung in the void between 2 trading routes, making it the perfect refueling point for legitimate traders and smugglers alike. Originally built as a military outpost during the Orion conflicts, it had evolved into a bustling transit hub where species from across the Coalition mingled with those from the unaligned worlds beyond. The central promenade buzzed with activity, merchants hawking exotic wares, maintenance crews repairing perpetually malfunctioning systems, and travelers from dozens of worlds grabbing sustenance before continuing their journeys. Our primary duty is cargo inspection, Marcus explained as they weaved through the crowd. We check manifests, scan for contraband, and make sure the tariffs get paid. Occasionally we break up fights or catch a smuggler, but it's mostly paperwork. Efficient inspection protocols are the foundation of border security, Lyra responded. I have memorized all 17 volumes of Coalition import regulations and contraband classifications. Marcus stifled another sigh. I'm sure that'll come in handy. The station's command center was a chaotic mess of screens and controllers for various species. At its center stood Station Commander Harkness, a tall, gaunt human with the perpetual look of someone who just smelled something unpleasant. Thorne, Harkness acknowledged with minimal enthusiasm. I see you've met your new partner. Try not to get this one killed, will you? Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression neutral. We've got a heavy docking schedule today, sir. We'll get started immediately. Harkness waved them away dismissively, already turning his attention back to a budget report. What did the station commander mean about not getting me killed? Lyra asked as they headed toward the inspection platforms. Just Harkness being his charming self, Marcus replied. Don't worry about it. They spent the next few hours processing a steady stream of merchant vessels, checking manifests, scanning cargo, and clearing ships for departure. Lyra proved efficient, if frustratingly rigid, running every scan in precise accordance with regulations. As their shift neared its end, a battered cargo hauler docked at the far end of Platform C. The ship's hull was a patchwork of repairs, its registration markings faded but still legible. Nomad's Luck, a freelance transport vessel registered to the Orion Trade Collective. Last one for the day, Marcus said, approaching the vessel's external scanner. Looks like they're carrying mineral samples and agricultural equipment. Lyra activated her handheld scanner, sweeping it methodically across the ship's exterior. Her ridgelines suddenly stiffened. Commander, I'm detecting anomalous biological signatures. Marcus glanced at her scanner. Could be the crew. Negative. These readings are coming from a section listed as equipment storage. Additionally, the signatures are being partially obscured by low-grade dampening technology. Before Marcus could respond, The ship's airlock cycled open. A bulky, reptilian figure emerged, scales glistening with an oily sheen under the platform lights. Captain Grishnak, according to the manifest. "Greetings, officers," the reptilian merchant called out, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "Just a routine shipment today. Agricultural components for the Proxima colonies. Nothing exciting." Marcus had interrogated enough suspects in his career to recognize the signs of someone hiding something. The reptilian's eyes darted between them, his clawed hands fidgeting with the datapad he carried. "We'll need to perform a full inspection," Marcus said, watching Grishnak's reaction carefully. The captain's scales rippled, a sign of distress in his species. "That won't be necessary, surely. My manifest is in order, and I'm on a tight schedule. Perhaps a small consideration for your time could expedite the process." He reached into a pouch at his waist, producing a small case that undoubtedly contained contraband currency or valuable minerals. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Are you attempting to bribe coalition officers, Captain?" Grishnak quickly tucked the case away. No. Just offering a courtesy gift, a custom among my people." Lyra stepped forward. "Captain, deliberate obstruction of inspection procedures is a Class 2 violation under Coalition Code 1138. Please step aside." Marcus caught her eye and nodded slightly. Something was definitely off. "Officer Lyrovac, conduct a thorough scan of the cargo hold. I'll escort the captain to the security office for additional questioning." "This is outrageous," Grishnak protested, but the nervous flicking of his tongue betrayed his anxiety. As Lyra proceeded toward the cargo bay, Marcus's hand rested instinctively on his sidearm. 15 years of border patrol had honed his instincts, and right now, they were screaming that something was very wrong about this ship. Lyra's methodical scan of the cargo hold revealed nothing unusual at first glance. Crates of farming equipment, mineral samples, and dried provisions lined the walls exactly as listed in the manifest. But the biological signatures persisted on her scanner, seemingly emanating from behind a section of ordinary-looking wall panels. "Commander," she called over the comm, "the biological readings are coming from behind the aft bulkhead, but I can detect no access point." Marcus, who had secured Grishnak in a holding area, rejoined her in the cargo bay. These old cargo haulers often have hidden compartments for smuggling. He ran his hand along the seam of the wall panels. Most smugglers think a few scramblers are enough to fool coalition scanners. He tapped different sections of the panel, listening carefully. There it is. He pressed firmly against a seemingly solid section of wall, and with a soft click, a concealed panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage. "Crude, but effective," Marcus muttered, drawing his sidearm. "Stay behind me." They navigated the cramped corridor, which opened into a small, dimly lit compartment. The stench hit them immediately, a mixture of waste, fear, and too many bodies confined in too small a space. What they found wasn't weapons, drugs, or any typical contraband. Huddled together on filthy sleeping pallets were 6 children of various alien species. The oldest appeared to be a lanky humanoid with blue-tinged skin and luminous eyes, no more than 12 by human standards. This child had positioned itself protectively before the others, its thin arms spread wide in a futile gesture of defense. Among the smaller children, Marcus recognized a young Ataraxian with delicate, translucent tendrils, a pair of reptilian twins with copper scales, a small furry being with 6 limbs, and a tiny creature with crystalline skin that glittered even in the dim light. All showed signs of malnutrition and neglect. "Coalition security," Marcus said softly, holstering his weapon. "We're not here to hurt you." The oldest child maintained its protective stance, eyes wide with terror. Lyra stepped forward, her normally rigid posture softening. To Marcus's surprise, she knelt down to the children's level. "You are safe now," she said, her voice gentler than he had heard before. "No one will harm you." The blue-skinned child didn't move, but its eyes flickered between them, assessing. "We need to get the medical attention," Marcus said quietly, "and find out where Grishnak was taking them." Lyra nodded, her typically composed features showing a flash of anger. "And why?" The medical bay on Kepler 186F station was ill-equipped for pediatric care, especially for multiple species, but the chief medical officer, a grizzled Terran named Dr. Eliza Chun, did her best with limited resources. They're malnourished and dehydrated, Dr. Chun reported as she administered fluids to the smallest child, the crystalline being whose skin now seemed dangerously dull. The Ataraxian shows signs of sensory deprivation, which is particularly dangerous for their species. The reptilian twins have scale rot, but physically they'll recover. And mentally? Marcus asked quietly. Dr. Chen's expression darkened. That's another matter entirely. They're terrified, and for what I can tell, they've been in that compartment for weeks. The blue one, some kind of indigo meridian, I think, hasn't let the others out of his sight. Lyra had been standing silently by the door, observing. Now she approached the oldest child, who sat rigidly on an examination table, watchful eyes never leaving the smaller ones being treated. "Do you understand my words?" she asked gently. The child gave no response, but something in its posture suggested comprehension. Lyra reached slowly into her pocket and produced a small device, a universal translator. She held it out, not forcing it upon the child. "This may help us communicate." After a moment of hesitation, the child accepted the device. "What is your designation?" Lyra asked. The child hesitated, then whispered something into the translator. The device processed for a moment, then produced, "Talon." "My name is Talon." "Talon," Lyra repeated. "These others, are they your siblings?" The translator converted Talon's soft response. "No, but I protect them. I'm oldest." Marcus stepped closer, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Talon, where are your parents? Where are you from?" The child's luminous eyes clouded. The translator struggled with the response, producing only fragments. "Gone. Taken. Ships came. Selected." A small hand reached out and grasped Talon's. It belonged to the Ataraxian child, whose tendrils were now gently pulsing with a soft light. The tendrils extended toward Lyra, not quite touching her. "May I?" Lyra asked, indicating the space between them. Talon nodded slightly. The Ataraxian's tendrils made contact with Lyra's hand, and she gasped. For a moment, her eyes unfocused as images flooded her mind. Flashes of fire, of adults being separated from children, of dark ship holds and rough hands. When the connection broke, Lyra stepped back, visibly shaken. They are all orphans," she said quietly. "Their worlds were raided. Adults taken for labor. Children selected for something else." Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Who took them? Did you see?" Lyra shook her head. The images were fragmented, but they were being transported to a facility, something called the Starlight Nursery. Their conversation was interrupted by the medical bay doors sliding open with unnecessary force. Station Commander Harkness entered, flanked by 2 security officers. "What's all this about smuggled aliens?" he demanded, his gaze falling on the children with an expression more annoyed than concerned. "Why wasn't I informed immediately?" "We were addressing their immediate medical needs, sir," Marcus replied. "These children require treatment and proper documentation before any further action." Harkness waved dismissively. "We'll transfer them to central processing on Artemis Station. They handle refugee placements. I've already filed the initial report." "Sir," Lyra interjected with uncharacteristic assertiveness, "these are not refugees. They're victims of trafficking. The standard protocols would be insufficient and potentially dangerous." Harkness's face reddened. "I don't recall asking for your opinion, officer. The procedure for undocumented aliens is clear. They go to central processing." "Commander," Marcus said, stepping between Harkness and the children, "we have reason to believe these children are connected to a larger trafficking operation. We should investigate further before transferring them." "Your job is to inspect cargo, not launch investigations," Harkness snapped. "The transport shuttle arrives tomorrow at 0800. Have them ready." He turned and stormed out, leaving a tense silence in his wake. Dr. Chun, who had been quietly continuing her work during the exchange, spoke up. Those children aren't going anywhere for at least 48 hours. Medical override. She tapped something into her datapad. Would you look at that? Their quarantine period just got extended. Bureaucratic mix-up. Marcus shot her a grateful look. We need to find out where Grishnak was taking them, and fast. Back in the security office, Grishnak sat sullenly in a detention cell, his scales now a dull gray from stress. Trafficking children, Marcus began, pacing before the cell. That's a level 1 offense in every civilized system. Mandatory neural reconditioning on the penal asteroids. Grishnak's neck frills flattened in fear. I'm just a transport. I don't ask questions about the cargo. These weren't cargo, Lyra stated coldly. They are sentient beings. Children. Grishnak's eyes darted between them. Look, I needed the credits. My ship was about to be repossessed. They offered triple the normal rate for a simple delivery. Who offered? Marcus demanded. And where are you taking them? The reptilian captain hesitated. I don't know who they really are. They call themselves the Starlight Nursery. Communications are always encrypted. Payment comes through shell corporations. I was supposed to deliver to an unmarked station in the Ceres asteroid. Bell, coordinates, Lyra demanded. Grishnak gave them, his resistance crumbling. They'll kill me if they find out I talked. You should be more worried about what we'll do if you haven't told us everything, Marcus replied. Who's running this operation? I don't know, I swear. Grishnak insisted. But there was something odd. The last time I made a delivery, I overheard something. They mentioned a client, someone important. They said the specimens were being prepared for Nova protocols. Marcus and Lyra exchanged glances. Is that significant? Grishnak asked. Maybe, Marcus replied noncommittally. You're staying in that cell until we figure it out. As they left the detention area, Lyra was already accessing the station's database on her datapad. I'll analyze the ship's navigation logs and communication records. The dampening technology might yield manufacturing signatures we can trace. I'll check if there's any mention of Starlight Nursery or Nova protocols in Coalition intelligence databases, Marcus added. They worked through the station's night cycle, Lyra methodically analyzing the technical data while Marcus called in old favors from contacts across the security network. By morning, they had assembled a troubling picture. The dampening technology has components manufactured by NovaCorp's subsidiaries, Lyra reported. And the coordinates Grishnak provided point to an unregistered mining operation in the Ceres belt, also linked to shell companies that trace back to NovaCorp holdings. NovaCorp, Marcus mused, one of the largest mining and research conglomerates in the sector. Officially squeaky clean, but there have always been rumors about their more remote operations. He pulled up a file on his screen. Their CEO is Elias Vance, former Coalition military intelligence, decorated officer, now one of the wealthiest individuals in the sector. A connection between Nova Protocols and NovaCorp seems statistically probable, Lyra observed. The medical bay alert chimed on both their communicators simultaneously. Dr. Chen's voice came through, tense and urgent. Security to medical now. They arrived to find the medical bay in chaos. A containment alarm was blaring, and emergency force field protocols had activated around the children's treatment area. Life support malfunction, Dr. Chun explained tersely, her fingers flying over the control panel. Oxygen levels dropped to near zero in their compartment. I've stabilized it manually, but the system is still showing errors. Marcus examined the control panel. This wasn't a malfunction. Someone overrode the safety protocols deliberately. He pointed to a diagnostic reading. See these command strings? They're external inputs. Someone on the station is trying to eliminate the children, Lyra concluded, her voice remaining calm despite the implication. A distant explosion rocked the station, causing the lights to flicker momentarily. Security alert, Level B, Section 4, announced the station's automated system. Fire containment protocols engaged. That's directly above us, Marcus realized. This is coordinated. We need to move the children, Lyra said decisively. This location is compromised. But where? Dr. Chen asked. Harkness has already flagged them for transfer. Marcus thought quickly. My quarters in the old maintenance section. It's off the main systems, has its own life support backup. We can secure it. That violates at least 7 station protocols, Lyra pointed out. Marcus looked at her expectantly, waiting for the objection he assumed would follow. Instead, she continued, we will need to create a diversion to transport them undetected. A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. Officer Lyra Vac, I think we might work well together after all. With Dr. Chin's help, they sedated the smaller children for safe transport. Talon refused sedation, but agreed to cooperate. Using a service corridor and a maintenance card, they transferred the children to Marcus's quarters, a spartanly furnished but spacious compartment in an older section of the station. It's not much, Marcus said as they settled the children, but it's secure. Lyra had already begun modifying the room's security systems. I've isolated the life support from the central grid and rerouted surveillance. We should be undetectable. Marcus watched her work, impressed by her technical skills. For someone so devoted to regulations, you're pretty good at circumventing them. Logical consistency would dictate following regulations, she replied without looking up from her work. But logic also dictates protecting the innocent when regulations fail to do so. Once the children were secure, with Dr. Chun remaining to monitor their condition, Marcus and Lyra returned to the security office. They needed to access restricted databases without alerting Harkness or whoever else might be involved. We need to get into Harkness's private terminal, Marcus said. If he's connected to this, there will be evidence. His office is secured with biometric locks, Lyra pointed out. Then we'll need a distraction. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Another merchant vessel docked, one flagged for enhanced inspection due to previous violations. Harkness, ever eager to collect additional processing fees from troublesome merchants, personally went to oversee the inspection. With Harkness occupied, Marcus and Lyra slipped into his office. While Marcus kept watch, Lyra connected a bypass device to Harkness's terminal. Security protocols circumvented, she announced after a tense minute. We have access. The files they discovered were damning. Financial transactions showing regular payments from unmarked accounts to Harkness, coinciding with the passage of certain vessels, including the Nomad's Luck. Communications referring obliquely to special cargo and discreet handling. And most disturbingly, a message about an imminent cleanup operation scheduled for that very day. He's been taking bribes to look the other way, Marcus said grimly. But I don't think he knows the full extent of what he's involved in. Nevertheless, he is complicit, Lyra stated, downloading the evidence to a secure data crystal. And he has summoned operatives to eliminate witnesses. Marcus checked the time. We need to get back to the children. If the cleanup is happening today. The station-wide alert system suddenly blared to life. Security breach in Maintenance Section C. All security personnel respond immediately. That's where my quarters are, Marcus said, already running. They sprinted through the station corridors, pushing past confused civilians. When they reached the maintenance section, they found the door to Marcus's quarters forced open, and inside, a scene of battlefield chaos. Dr. Chun was unconscious on the floor, bleeding from a head wound. 3 black-clad figures with unmarked combat gear were trying to subdue the children. Talon had placed himself before the others, and remarkably, was holding the attackers at bay with what appeared to be weak telekinetic abilities, pushing them back whenever they approached, though the effort was clearly draining him. Marcus didn't hesitate. He charged the nearest attacker, tackling him to the ground. The second turned, raising a weapon, but Lyra was faster. She executed a precise Xylosian combat maneuver, striking pressure points that rendered the attacker's arm useless before delivering a knockout blow. The third attacker, seeing his companions fall, grabbed the nearest child, the small crystalline being, and held a blade to its fragile body. Stand down, or this one shatters. Marcus froze, his hands raised. Let the child go. This doesn't have to get messy. Too late for that, the attacker growled. You've already complicated things enough. He began backing toward the door, still holding the terrified child. What happened next occurred so quickly that Marcus barely processed it. The Ataraxian child's tendrils suddenly extended to impossible length, wrapping around the attacker's legs. Simultaneously, Talon made a pushing gesture, and the attacker staggered backward, as if struck. In that moment of imbalance, Lyra moved with blinding speed, disarming him and rendering him unconscious with a precise nerve strike. As the attacker collapsed, Marcus noticed a small object fall from his pocket, a sleek, high-tech communication device bearing a subtle but unmistakable logo, NovaCorp. "They found us," Marcus said, checking on Dr. Chun, who was beginning to regain consciousness. "And they'll send more. We cannot remain on this station," Lyra concluded. "The children are not safe here. We need to take the fight to them," Marcus agreed. "Go to the source." "The coordinates in the Ceres belt," Lyra nodded. "But we would need a ship and authorization." "We're way past authorization," Marcus interrupted. "As for a ship," he glanced at the unconscious attackers. "I bet these guys have one docked somewhere." Using the captured communicator, they located the attacker's vessel, a sleek, unmarked transport with advanced stealth capabilities. With Dr. Chin's reluctant help, they transferred the children to the ship under the guise of a medical transport. Just as they were preparing to board, a squad of station security officers approached, led by a furious Harkness. "Thorn, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. Marcus faced him calmly. "Taking evidence of a crime to the proper authorities. You have no authorization to leave this station." Harkness spluttered. "This is insubordination." "It's actually something much worse," Marcus replied, nodding to Lyra. Lyra stepped forward, her posture formal. "Station Commander Harkness, you are hereby detained under Coalition Security Protocol 37B for suspicion of corruption, dereliction of duty, and accessory to sentient trafficking." She produced the data crystal containing the evidence from his terminal. Harkness's face drained of color. "You can't. We already have." Marcus cut him off. "Lyra, if you'll do the honors." Lyra efficiently restrained the shocked commander while the security officers, uncertain of what to do, stood by awkwardly. "Officer Daniels," Marcus addressed the highest ranking among them, "I'm invoking emergency protocols and transferring temporary command to you. Secure the station, lock down all communications, and expect Coalition internal affairs within 48 hours. Daniels, who had never much liked Harkness anyway, nodded. "Yes, sir." With Harkness secured and the station temporarily stabilized, Marcus and Lyra boarded the commandeered vessel with the children and Dr. Chun, who had insisted on accompanying them to continue medical care. "You realize we're technically stealing a ship and going AWOL," Marcus commented as they prepared for departure. "I am aware," Lyra replied, her fingers moving efficiently over the unfamiliar controls. "However, the logical course of action when confronted with systemic corruption is to operate outside that system." Marcus grinned despite the gravity of their situation. "I think I'm becoming a bad influence on you, officer." The journey to the Ceres asteroid belt took 18 hours, during which they prepared as best they could. The ship's database contained valuable intelligence, security protocols for the NovaCorp facility, communication codes, and most disturbingly, partial manifests of previous shipments of children. "They've been doing this for years," Marcus said grimly, reviewing the data. "Dozens, maybe hundreds of children." Lyra, who had been analyzing the facility schematics, looked up. The manifestations also note specific genetic or psychic traits. They are selecting for abilities. Dr. Chun joined them, having stabilized the children in the ship's small medical bay. The tests I ran show genetic markers that have been artificially highlighted in their systems, like someone tagged them for specific traits. But for what purpose? Marcus wondered. Their answer came as they approached the coordinates. Hidden among the asteroids of the Ceres belt was a massive facility, far larger than the mining operation it purported to be. A central hub connected to multiple domed structures, with ships coming and going from several docking bays. Impressive security, Lyra noted as they scanned the facility. Multiple shield layers, weapons emplacements disguised as mining equipment, patrol vessels. "Good thing we have their codes," Marcus replied. "Let's see if we can bluff our way in." Using the command codes from the capture communicator, They transmitted an approach request. NovaCorp security team Sigma returning with recovery. Marcus announced, mimicking the gruff tone of the attacker. After a tense moment, permission was granted. They docked in a secondary bay, away from the main traffic, and prepared to disembark. The children stay on board with Dr. Chun, Marcus insisted. Locked down and ready for immediate departure. Agreed, Lyra said. Our priority is gathering definitive evidence and, if possible, rescuing any other captives. They donned the attackers' unmarked armor, which thankfully included full helmets that concealed their species. Armed with the attackers' weapons and the facility schematics, they moved into the station. Their ruse worked initially. The facility's personnel barely glanced at them as they moved through the corridors, just another security team on rounds. Following the schematics, they made their way toward a section marked processing. What they found there chilled them to the bone. A vast chamber housed dozens of transparent cells, each containing children of various species. Some are undergoing scans or tests, observed by white-coated scientists. Others appeared to be demonstrating abilities, manipulating small objects, communicating with each other across cells, or enduring stress tests. They're farming them for psychic abilities, Marcus whispered, horrified. Lyra's normally impassive face showed clear distress. Many of these species are known for latent psychic potential. They're identifying and enhancing these traits. Before they could investigate further, an announcement echoed through the facility. All security teams to command center. Infiltration alert. Repeat, infiltration alert. So much for the element of surprise, Marcus muttered. We should split up, Lyra suggested. I will access the central database to gather evidence. You free the children. Marcus nodded reluctantly. Be careful. Meet back at the ship in 30 minutes. As Lyra disappeared toward the command center, Marcus approached the containment area. The scientists were evacuating, leaving the children unattended. He overrode the security lock using the codes from their capture equipment and entered. I'm here to help, he told the frightened children, removing his helmet to show his face. We're going to get you out of here. Some of the older children translated for the others. There was hesitation, fear, but also desperate hope in their eyes. Marcus began opening the cells, directing the children toward a service corridor that would lead them back to the docking bay. Meanwhile, Lyra had reached the command center, now mostly abandoned due to the security alert. She quickly accessed the main console and began downloading data, research files, communications, operational plans. What she found confirmed their worst fears. NovaCorp, under Elias Vance's direction, had been conducting illegal research into enhancing and weaponizing psychic abilities. The children were test subjects, selected for their genetic potential and being prepared for implementation, a process that would effectively turn them into living weapons. As she finished the download, a smooth voice spoke from behind her. Impressive. You've made it further than any previous infiltrators. Lyra turned to find herself facing a tall, elegant man in an immaculate business suit. Despite never having seen him in person, she recognized him immediately from his files. Elias Vance. Your operation violates 17 coalition laws and 9 interspecies treaties, Lyra stated calmly, subtly reaching for her weapon. Vance smiled thinly. The coalition's laws are for those without vision. What we're doing here transcends legal constraints. These children have gifts that could transform our understanding of consciousness itself. By turning them into weapons, Lyra countered. Tools, Vance corrected. Extremely valuable tools for those with the resources to acquire them. Do you have any idea what certain governments would pay for operatives with controllable psychic abilities? He took a step closer. You're Xylosian. Your people understand the value of logic over sentiment. Join me. Your analytical skills would be an asset. Lyra's posture straightened. A logical analysis of this situation yields one conclusion. You are a criminal exploiting children for profit. Vance sighed. Disappointing. He touched a device on his wrist, and suddenly Lyra felt a wave of disorientation. A neural disruptor, he explained conversationally, particularly effective against Xylosian brain patterns. One of many benefits our research has yielded. Lyra fought against the disorientation, her training allowing her to remain standing despite the attack on her neural system. In a fluid motion, she drew her weapon and fired, not at Vance, but the ceiling above him. The shot triggered the fire suppression system, flooding the room with suppressant gas. In the momentary confusion, Lyra lunged at Vance, delivering a precise strike to the wrist device. It shattered, and the neural disruption ceased. Vance's composed facade cracked. He drew a weapon of his own, a sophisticated pulse pistol, but Lyra had already closed the distance. A brief, intense struggle ensued, ending with Vance unconscious on the floor and Lyra securing the data crystal with the downloaded evidence. Meanwhile, Marcus had gathered over 30 children from the containment area and was leading them through service corridors toward the docking bay. Security forces were searching the main passages, but they remained undetected in the less-traveled maintenance routes. They reached the docking bay to find Dr. Chun waiting anxiously at the ship's ramp. "Hurry," she called. "They're trying to override the docking clamps." Marcus ushered the children aboard, counting heads frantically. "Where's Lyra?" he muttered, checking the time. Her 30 minutes were almost up. Just as he was preparing to go back for her, Lyra appeared at the corridor entrance, running at full speed with a security team in pursuit. "Go!" she shouted as she reached the ramp. Facility destruct sequence activated. Marcus didn't question her. As soon as she was aboard, he sealed the hatch and launched the ship, blasting away from the docking clamps with brute force rather than proper release procedures. "What happened?" he asked as they accelerated away from the facility. "Elias Vance happened," Lyra replied, catching her breath. "But I obtained the evidence." She held up the data crystal, and perhaps more importantly, triggered the facility's self-destruct system. Behind them, explosions began to bloom across the NovaCorp facility. Not enough to destroy it completely, but sufficient to cripple operations and destroy incriminating evidence, though not the evidence now safely in their possession. "Will it destroy the whole place?" Marcus asked, concerned for any children they might have missed. "Negative," Lyra assured him. "I targeted only the research data centers and weapons development areas. The living quarters and medical facilities remain intact. Coalition forces will be able to rescue any remaining children." As if on cue, their communications system activated with an incoming transmission from a Coalition patrol vessel. The familiar insignia of Internal Affairs appeared on the screen. "Unidentified vessel departing NovaCorp facility. This is Coalition Cruiser Vigilant. Heave to and prepare for boarding." Marcus exchanged a glance with Lyra before responding. "Vigilant. This is Commander Marcus Thorne and Officer Lyra Vac of Kepler, 186 F Station Security. We have rescued approximately 40 children from illegal human trafficking and experimentation at the NovaCorp facility. Request immediate medical support and security backup." There was a pause before the response came. "Commander Thorne, our records show you're supposed to be on duty at Kepler, 186 F Station. Explain your current situation." "It's a long story," Marcus replied with a tired smile, "and one that's going to cause quite a scandal when it breaks." The next several hours were chaotic. The Coalition cruiser escorted them to the nearest major station, Artemis Prime, where medical teams were waiting to receive the children. Internal Affairs officers debriefed Marcus and Lyra extensively, initially with suspicion that gradually transformed into stunned disbelief as Lyra presented the evidence they had gathered. "This goes beyond anything we've seen before," admitted Director Keller of Internal Affairs, reviewing the files. "NovaCorp has operations throughout Coalition space. If Vance has been running this trafficking network under our noses—" "He has," Marcus confirmed grimly. "And he's been selling these enhanced children to the highest bidders, governments, private military contractors, anyone with the credits to pay. We've already dispatched teams to the facility," Keller informed them, "and arrest warrants are being prepared for Vance and his associates. Station Commander Harkness is already in custody and singing like a Venusian canary to save his own skin." "And the children?" Lyra asked, her concern evident despite her composed demeanor. Keller's expression softened slightly. They'll receive the best care the Coalition can provide. We'll attempt to locate their families or home worlds, though from your report, that may be difficult in many cases. In the station's medical center, Dr. Chun was overseeing the children's care, assisted by a team of specialists. Marcus and Lyra found her examining the small crystalline child they had first rescued. "How are they?" Marcus asked quietly. Dr. Chun looked up, her expression a mixture of professional concern and personal outrage. "Physically, they'll recover with time. The real damage is psychological. These children have experienced trauma that would break most adults." Talon sat nearby, still watching over the younger children, even as he submitted to his own medical examination. He nodded slightly in recognition when he saw Marcus and Lyra. The Ataraxian child's tendrils brightened when they entered, and it made a small gesture that seemed to be an invitation. Lyra approached and knelt beside it. "They want to show you something," Dr. Chen explained. The Ataraxian, its name is Nyara, has been communicating with the medical staff telepathically. Limited but effective. Lyra hesitantly extended her hand, and Nyara's tendrils gently wrapped around her fingers. Immediately, Lyra's mind filled with images, not of fear and pain this time, but of gratitude, of hope, and strangely, of attachment. The child had formed a bond with its rescuers. When the connection ended, Lyra remained still for a moment, processing the emotional impact of the communication. They see us as protectors," she said finally, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Marcus had moved to speak with Talon, who was using the universal translator to communicate more effectively now. "What will happen to us?" Talon asked, the translator rendering his musical language into flat, standard Coalition speech. "The Coalition will try to find your families or suitable homes," Marcus answered honestly. Talon's luminous eyes dimmed slightly. "No families. All gone." "You don't know that for certain," Marcus tried to reassure him. "The Coalition has extensive resources." "I know," Talon interrupted, a certainty in his tone that belied his youth. "I felt them go. All of us did. That is why we were chosen. No one has searched for us." The implication was chilling. NovaCorp had deliberately selected orphan children, those who wouldn't be missed or searched for. It made tactical sense, but the calculated cruelty of it struck Marcus anew. "Then the Coalition will find new homes for you," he promised. "Good homes, with people who will care for you." Talon looked at each of the younger children in turn, his gaze lingering on Nyara, the reptilian twins, the six-limbed furry child, and the crystalline being. "We stay together," he stated firmly. "We protect each other now." Over the next several days, as the investigation expanded and NovaCorp facilities across Coalition space were raided, Marcus and Lyra found themselves spending most of their off-duty hours with the children. What had begun as a sense of responsibility had evolved into something deeper, a connection that neither of them had anticipated. They will begin relocating the children next week, Lyra informed Marcus as they watched the children participating in a carefully supervised recreation session. The younger ones were playing a simple game with light puzzles, while Talon sat slightly apart, watchful as always. "I know," Marcus replied, his expression troubled. "They'll be split up, sent to different worlds based on their species' needs." "A logical approach," Lyra agreed, though without her usual conviction. Marcus glanced at her. Over the past weeks, he had witnessed subtle changes in his partner, a softening of her rigid adherence to protocol, a greater willingness to trust intuition alongside logic. For his part, he had found himself adopting some of her methodical thinking, becoming less impulsive. "Is it logical?" he questioned. "These kids have formed their own family unit. Talon watches over them like a parent. They communicate in ways we don't fully understand. Splitting them up might do more harm than good." Lyra was silent for a moment, watching as Nyara used her tendrils to help the crystalline child, now identified as a rare prism collective being named Lux, with a particularly challenging puzzle. "I have been researching Coalition placement protocols," she said finally. "There is a provision for special cases where standard species-based placement will be detrimental to psychological recovery. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You've been thinking about this too. It would be a complex undertaking, Lyra continued, not quite meeting his eyes. Multi-species household adaptations, specialized educational provisions, ongoing medical and psychological support. Lyra, Marcus interrupted gently. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Now she did look at him, her obsidian purple features set with determination. I believe we are uniquely qualified to provide an appropriate environment for these children. Our experience with various species, our security training, our demonstrated ability to protect them. You want us to adopt them, Marcus stated, not as a question. All of them, Lyra confirmed, as a cohesive unit, is the most logical solution for their well-being. Marcus looked back at the children, tried to imagine it, a life vastly different from anything he had ever planned, raising 6 alien children with his Zylosian partner. It was absurd, impossible, overwhelming, and yet something in him had already made the decision. It won't be easy, he said. The bureaucracy alone will be a nightmare. We need a bigger living space, specialized equipment for each species. I have already created preliminary plans addressing these concerns, Lyra replied, producing a datapad, including potential residence locations, educational options, and required resources. Marcus laughed softly. Of course you have. He shook his head in amazement. You know, when we first met, I thought you were the most rigid, rule-bound officer I'd ever encountered. And I thought you were reckless and illogical, she countered, a hint of warmth in her voice. Perhaps we have both adjusted our initial assessments. 2 weeks later, they stood in the offices of the Coalition Family Services Division on Artemis Prime. Director Keller of Internal Affairs had personally recommended their case, and the evidence they had gathered had indeed created a scandal that reached the highest levels of the Coalition. Nova Corp was being dismantled, its legitimate operations sold off, its criminal enterprises exposed. Elias Vance was in custody, facing multiple life sentences on a maximum security penal colony. But none of that mattered today. Today, they stood before Administrator Jorel, a stern-looking Centaurian whose multiple eyes blinked asynchronously as she reviewed their application. This is unprecedented, she stated, setting down the datapad. A human and a Zylosian applying to jointly adopt 6 children of different species, none of which match either of yours. We are aware of the unusual nature of our request, Lyra acknowledged. However, these children have formed a family unit that would be traumatized by separation, and we have formed significant bonds with them during their rescue and recovery. Administrator Jorel's secondary eyes focused on Marcus. And you, Commander Thorne, are you equally committed to this unconventional arrangement? Marcus stood straight, meeting her gaze steadily. Absolutely. These kids need us, and frankly, we need them too. The regulations regarding interspecies adoption are complex, Jorel continued. There are biological considerations, cultural concerns, specialized care, requirements. We have extensively researched these issues, Lyra interjected, presenting another datapad. This contains our comprehensive care plan, including specialized living accommodations for each child's biological needs, educational arrangements, and medical provisions. Jorel accepted the datapad, skimming through its contents with surprising speed. Impressively thorough, she admitted. But raising children is more than logistics, Officer Lyrovac. It requires emotional support, cultural guidance, moral development. Administrator, Marcus said, leaning forward slightly. We're not claiming to be perfect parents, but these kids have been through hell. They were taken from their homes, experimented on, and were being prepared to be sold as weapons. Despite all that, they still have hope, still care for each other. They formed their own family when everything was taken from them. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Lyra and I, we're different species with different approaches to life, but we've learned to work together to complement each other's strengths. We want to give these kids a home where diversity is a strength, where they can heal and grow without fear. We can't replace what they've lost, but we can give them a future. Administrator Jorel was silent for a long moment, her multiple eyes blinking in their strange rhythm. Finally, She set down the datapad. I've reviewed over 3,000 adoption applications in my career, she said slowly. Most from perfectly qualified, same-species couples with stable incomes and suitable homes. By conventional metrics, you two would be considered high-risk candidates. Marcus felt his heart sink. However, Jorel continued, these are not conventional circumstances. These children have formed attachments to you both, particularly strong ones, according to the psychological assessments. And your actions in rescuing them demonstrate a level of commitment that cannot be questioned. She touched a control on her desk, and the screen behind her illuminated with official coalition documentation. There will be monitoring, of course, regular check-ins, support services. The coalition takes child welfare seriously, especially in cases as unique as this. Does this mean? Marcus began, hardly daring to hope. It means, Jorel stated, her tone softening slightly, that I am provisionally approving your application, pending final reviews and home assessment. Congratulations, Commander Thorne, Officer Lyravak. It seems you're about to become parents. The children were waiting in an adjacent room, supervised by Dr. Chun, who had remained involved in their care throughout the process. When Marcus and Lyra entered, 6 pairs of eyes turned to them expectantly. Well, Talon asked, the translator rendering his question with uncharacteristic emotion. Marcus knelt down to be at eye level with the seated children. It's not completely final yet, but it looks like we're going to be a family. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Nyara's tendrils lit up like a festival display, projecting waves of joy that everyone in the room could feel. The reptilian twins, Saren and Kira, performed an intricate pattern of scale rippling that signified celebration in their culture. Moki, the 6-limbed furry child, bounded across the room to wrap 4 arms around Marcus while the other 2 reached for Lyra. Lux, the crystalline child, literally glowed with happiness, refracting light into dozens of rainbow patterns across the walls. Talon moved more slowly, approaching Lyra and Marcus with dignity beyond his years. You will be our parents? He asked, the translator struggling with a concept his native language might not fully express. Yes, Lyra answered simply, if that is acceptable to you. A smile slowly spread across Talon's blue features. It is very acceptable. The next months were a whirlwind of activity. Their provisional approval became final after extensive home assessments and preparation. Marcus accepted a reassignment to Coalition Security Headquarters on Artemis Prime, while Lyra took a position in the Interspecies Relations Division, both roles that allowed them more stable schedules and resources for their new family. They purchased a large, adaptable dwelling on the outskirts of the main settlement, a home with rooms that could be adjusted for temperature, humidity, and lighting to accommodate each child's biological needs. Lux required a crystalline-fused sleeping chamber. The reptilian twins needed a warm, humid environment. Moki thrived with climbing structures and soft surfaces. Nyara's tendrils required special light sources to remain healthy, and Talon's room included sound insulation to help him control his developing telepathic abilities. There were challenges, of course. Cultural misunderstandings, health scares, nightmares from past trauma, and the everyday chaos of raising 6 children. Marcus sometimes reacted too emotionally, while Lyra occasionally retreated in a logical analysis when faced with overwhelming feelings. But they learned from each other, adapted, and grew together. 6 months after the adoption became final, on the anniversary of the day they had first discovered the children on the Nomad's luck, they held a celebration. Their home was filled with an eclectic mix of guests: Dr. Chun, now a family friend, Director Keller, who had become an unexpected ally, several of Marcus's former colleagues, and even a few Xylosian diplomats who had taken an interest in Lyra's unconventional path. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself standing on the garden terrace, watching the children play an intricate game of their own invention that somehow accommodated all their different abilities and limitations. Lyra joined him, standing close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, a significant gesture for a Xylosian. They are thriving, she observed, a note of pride in her voice. They are, Marcus agreed, though I'm still not sure if we're raising them, or if they're raising us. Perhaps both, Lyra suggested. A symbiotic, developmental relationship. Marcus laughed softly. Only you could make parenting sound like a scientific experiment. Is it not? She countered, a hint of humor in her tone. Hypothesis, experimentation, failure, adjustment, occasional success. When you put it that way, he conceded. They stood in companionable silence, watching as Talon helped Lux navigate a particularly challenging part of the game, while Nyara used her tendrils to gently guide Moki. The reptilian twins were performing some kind of synchronized movement that had the others applauding. I received a communication from the Coalition Relocation Committee today, Lyra said after a moment. They have found survivors from Talon's world, a small colony that escaped the raids. They wish to know if he would prefer to be with his own kind. Marcus tensed. What did you tell them? I told them I would discuss it with him. As is proper, Lyra replied. I did so this morning. And, he said, and I quote precisely, I am already with my kind. My kind is here. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest ease. Smart kid. Indeed, Lyra agreed. Though I calculate approximately 43% of his vocabulary and behavioral patterns now mimic yours, which is somewhat concerning. Marcus grinned. Only 43%? I'll have to work harder. A comfortable silence fell between them again, broken only when Nyara approached, her tendrils glowing softly in the evening light. She didn't speak. She rarely did, preferring telepathic communication, but she reached out, one tendril touching Marcus's hand and another touching Lyra's, creating a connection between the three of them. Through that connection flowed, not words, but pure feeling, belonging, safety, family. Home. When Nyara returned to the game, Marcus noticed Lyra blinking rapidly, the Xylosian equivalent of holding back tears. You okay? He asked gently. Lyra nodded, her composure returning. I am experiencing an optimal state of emotional well-being, she stated, then added more simply, I am happy, Marcus. Marcus smiled, looking back at their improbable family. 6 alien children rescued from the darkest of circumstances, now playing and laughing in the garden of the home they shared. A family forged not by blood or species, but by choice and love. Yeah, he agreed softly. Me too.